Hello and welcome. This is NTA Tuesday Live, and I'm Cyril Stober. In tonight's edition of the program, attention will be on governance, traditional rulers, and national cohesion. This will serve as a cornerstone for the panelists who would be shedding more light on the topic. Now, from the pre-colonial to post-colonial dispensations, the traditional institution has remained a revered platform through which activities of governance were coordinated with ease and the masses carried along within the ambit of constitutional provisions. Now, this saw the institution playing discrete roles in mobilizing the people for development and progress of the traditional African societies. In Nigeria, the institution evolved over time into an instrument of uniting the people and uplifting the country from independence to date. Tuesday Live will essentially examine some of the milestones achieved and the calls for constitutional engagement of the traditional rulers in building a solid foundation for governance and dealing with other societal challenges. But before we go into the conversation, let's get to see this report put together by correspondent Kenneth Nanim.
Considering the critical role by traditional institutions in the maintenance of peace and order and the general administration of the local communities in Nigeria, successive administrations right from the colonial era have leveraged the already established socio-economic and political hierarchy of this institution to extend governance to the grassroots.
Traditional institutions serve as a ladder. Once there's a message from the top, it's come down to the traditional institution, and the message is passed to the grassroots. Likewise, once they have the same, once the grassroots have some challenges, the same thing applied.
In the early days of emergence of societies in the African setting, including Nigeria, the traditional institution was powerful, influential, and well revered by the subjects. As human society continues to metamorphose, the powers and relevance of the custodians of culture and tradition seem to be dwindling. Recently, some traditional rulers in some parts of the country were accused of aiding insurgency, banditry, kidnapping, and other forms of criminality in their domains. Could these be considered as part of reasons for the fading influence of traditional rulers?
Some of the governors have appointed traditional rulers because of political reasons. And therefore, it doesn't matter whether you're a thief in the village or whether you're a 419er in the village, you are becoming a traditional ruler. And once you hold that title, people now look at you with disdain. That respect, that honor, that dignity has collapsed. All this dismantling of the traditional rulerships, autonomous communities, creating of autonomous communities here and there, and then it waters down the powers of the traditional rulers themselves.
However, for traditional institutions to remain relevant and legally perform the duties expected of it without fear of favor, traditional rulers across the country have been clamoring to have their functions, powers, and authorities of their staff of offices be well captured in the nation's constitution, for which they have taken advocacy to relevant authorities, including the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation.
The House of Reps actually approved our inclusion in the constitution, but we didn't make the mark or the required votes in the Senate. So we are still hanging.
And any role we are playing, we'll be playing with that confidence, that security, that backed by law, and that's the way essence. So that we are not being challenged that why are you doing this, with their recognition by the Constitution.
If traditional rulers are the custodians of the people's culture and tradition within their societies, and they are not part of the governance of their society, certainly something is wrong. So I think they don't even need to clamor for it. Our representatives at the National Assembly should be able to understand that, look, the role of traditional rulers should be taken seriously if we have to succeed in both our economic and security stability in this country.
What impact will the full autonomy granted to the local government councils have on the operations of traditional institutions?
Their role cannot be overlooked in making sure that the security of our society is controlled. Their role cannot be overlooked in ensuring a smooth running of a local government, particularly now that the local council have been given autonomy to be able to control the finances and, of course, utilize the finances that comes to the local council from the federation. I think the traditional rulers' role will now be much more required.
The people who are going to be at the local council, please let them not betray Mr. President. Let them not betray the electorate. Let them do what is expected. So I am sure they will be cautious on the area of development. And I'm sure with time, all challenges in the educational sector, health, other infrastructure will be addressed.
With the new status of the local government, raised the performance bar for traditional institutions in Nigeria in contributing its quota towards national cohesion, only time will tell. Kenneth Nanim.
All right. That report sets the tone for tonight's discussion. Let me go ahead and introduce our very revered guests on tonight's program. We are being joined tonight by His Royal Highness Dr. Yahya Abubakar, the Echunupe and Chairman of the Niger State Council of Traditional Rulers, who's also the Chairman Coordinating Committee of the National Council of Traditional Rulers of Nigeria. He joins us via Zoom from Bida, Niger State. Your Royal Highness, thanks for being with us tonight. Okay. Let me also welcome tonight His Royal Highness Justice Sidi Bagi Muhammad, the Emir of Lafia and Bari, is Chairman of the Nasarawa State Council of Emirs and Chiefs, also a retired Justice of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. He joins us also via Zoom from Lafia. Your Royal Highness, thank you for being with us tonight. Also tonight, let me welcome His Majesty Dr. Lawrence Agubuzu. He is the Eze Agudechendu of Ezema Olo Kingdom, a former chairman of the Enugu State Council of Traditional Rulers, former chairman Southeast Council of Traditional Rulers, and the former Korea ambassador of Nigeria to the United Nations. Your Majesty, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you, sir.
Right. And let me also welcome to this program one who has been with us for quite some time, and I'm talking about Dr. Mainasara Kogo Umar, a lawyer, economist, public affairs analyst, and in addition, a member of the Kogo traditional dynasty. And of course, as we know, is only recently been appointed by the president as a chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal. I would like to congratulate you on your recent appointment, and thank you for being with us here.
Thank you very much. It's always enthusiastic to be here to contribute for nation building.
All right, thank you so much. Well, at some point in time, we do expect we'll also be joined by His Imperial Majesty Abadiye Enitan Ogunwusi Ojaja II, the Oni of Ife, and co-chair of the National Council of Traditional Rulers of Nigeria. We do hope to be joined by him later in the program. But thank you for being with us, and as you know, at some point in time we will go interactive and you can join in the discussion in the studio. But let's begin to look at the issues tonight as we talk about governance, traditional rulers, and national cohesion. And let me go over to His Royal Highness Echunupe, and Your Royal Highness, let's start by taking a look at the role of traditional rulers, your role as custodians of the people's customs and traditions, and how this has been able to help in linking the diverse cultures in the promotion of unity among the people of the country. Culture in the promotion of unity among the people of the country.
Thank you, sir. Thank the Almighty Allah once again for this opportunity, and also to reinstate our position as the custodians of our culture and tradition. That there is no doubt about that. And we have been playing this role even before the coming of the colonialists who came in and found out this institution has a binding force between its people and the authority that is playing. In other words, it was no institution where sort of authority before the coming of colonialists. And then when they came, they discovered that this network we have on the ground, that is reaching from the bottom to the top. We have a community leader, we have a ward head, we have a village head, we have a district head, and also an emir. And then in each of these areas, there's command and control of our people. We know our people very well. We understand them. We know their homes. We know even what they eat, how they walk, and what they behave. So it's just like a family. The institution is a natural institution whereby we have the authority playing and allowing each individual in the community to play his or her role for development, peace, and progress of the community. Going by this, the institution has suffered a lot of what I can call bastardizing in terms of act of governance. When we check through our constitutions, right from before independence, after the independence, and up to this moment, as we are talking, where we discover that in 1999 Constitution, the institution is totally excised out or set aside, so to say. And we are not actively participating in the art of governance in the country. So has left a wide gap between the governing and the governed. We discovered that this institution is like a bridge that can link the governing and the governed in terms of peace, security, and progress of our people. And where the institution continues to exist is only the Almighty Divine that the institutions still exist in Nigeria. Otherwise, the way things have been, or they have been bullying this institution, we may just find ourselves very, very irrelevant. However, nature has given us that protection, and we have been doing our jobs. As traditional rulers, we listen to our people, we know their earnings, we know their aspiration, we know how they behave, and from time to time, they come to us with confidence and belief that whatever is happening to them, they will come to us and get appropriate solutions, because we have that justice, trust, and sort of act of understanding human behavior closely. as we always say that we are very close to our people, it's not just statement of now, but it's a certain fact that yes, we are very, very close to our people, we know them, and we believe strongly that if we have been given that opportunity to be in the governance of this our other state, federal or local, we'll be able to do very much and advise the authority the way forward in terms of peace, security, and development. What we are asking fundamentally in the Constitution is to have that legal instrument that will be actually recognized in the Constitution. Thereafter, we'll define some functions that will be doing side by side with the authorities, both at local, state, and federal levels. So I think at this juncture, I would like to make a pause and give other participants opportunity to bring out those salient points and those issues that have been bedeviling the institution in terms of constitutional recognition and functions that are supposed to be assigned to this institution or to the traditional rulers in Nigeria. Thank you, Syria.
Right. Thank you so very much, Your Royal Highness. And back here in the studio, Your Majesty, these are the issues that we have tonight. How the traditional institution, the traditional rulers who are the custodians of the people's cultures and traditions, how they've been able to use this to link the people, promote unity among them, despite the fact that as it is now, there is no set constitutional role for them. Yes, Your Majesty.
Well, as His Royal Highness Esunupe has clearly stated, there's no gainsaying that the traditional rulers have had and still have roles to play in maintenance of peace and stability. We may go back to history and know that before the Europeans came to Africa, the traditional rulers were perfectly in charge of their various kingdoms, their various chiefdoms, and they did the work very well. When the colonial powers came to Africa to colonize us, it was these traditional rulers who galvanized our people, brought them together to resist the occupation of our land by the colonial powers. They rallied our people together, and they knew that colonialism was not going to help our people. They fought hard to keep our independence. And some of them suffered untold hardships. I recall, for instance, that King Jaja of Opobo, because he refused to allow the colonial people to take over his land, he was exiled, and he died in exile. But eventually, when the colonial powers took over our kingdoms, they still discovered they could not govern effectively without the help of the traditional rulers. So they brought them back to help keep peace and ensure there is security, peace, and progress in the various communities. Then, of course, at independence, it was still discovered that no government can effectively control the country without the help of the traditional rulers. So the traditional rulers were actually part and parcel of government in Nigeria at independence. I know, for instance, in the former Eastern Nigeria, the king of Opobo, King Jaja of Opobo, for instance, was a minister of state in the government of Eastern Nigeria. And it was so in the north, it was so in the west. Some traditional rulers were actually ministers. Then until the military came and sort of things started falling apart. And now, even the military governments found out that they still needed to work with the traditional rulers. And when they dispensed with parliaments, the only way they could reach the grassroots were through the traditional institutions in this country. And the traditional rulers actually helped to stabilize the country during the constant military changes. Most of the time, the only institution that the people can look up to was the traditional institution in this country. So right now, we've come to a point where really people are asking questions. Do we still need this traditional institution in our country, or don't we need it? We must address this question as Nigerians. In Tanzania, for instance, when Mwalimu Julius Nyerere became the prime minister after the departure of the British, he abolished traditional institutions in Tanzania. And he was able to do so because he himself was a prince of one of the kingdoms in Tanzania before the British came. And his father was alive when he abolished the institution. And Julius Nyerere said, told his father, look, I can't see this institution continuing in an independent Tanganyika as it was then. That it will create problems. So he abolished it. The other countries that had monarchies and they abolished. But those who found the institution, necessary, have tried to maintain it and give it roles in their countries.
Okay.
So here in Nigeria, we should not try to eat our cake and say, have it. If we need the traditional institution, like they do in Britain, they do in Netherlands and other places, they do in Ghana here, we must come out as Nigerians and say, yes, we need this institution. Okay. And we want to ensure that they are really empowered to do the work given to them.
All right. Thank you so much,
Thank
Your
you.
Majesty. We'll return to some of the issues, but I'm glad to say that we have now been joined by His Imperial Majesty Oba Adeyeye Enito Ogunwusi Ojaja II, Ooni of Ife, who's also joined us now on this conversations, co-chair of the National Council of Traditional Rulers of Nigeria. Your Royal Majesty, Your Imperial Majesty, thank you for being with us today. We appreciate you joining us. And the issues at stake are ones you're quite familiar with, and we know you've spoken a lot about it. So let's hear your views about how the traditional institution can galvanize the people, and so that the much talked about national cohesion that we've debated for ages now can have at least some clarity and begin to take roots.
Thank you very much. I'm very grateful for the honor and privilege to be part of these very major topical issues of our their nation. But beyond our their nation, traditional institution is part of nature, is part of the entire structure of the universe. The earlier we know this, the better for all of us. The history of the world over the last 2,000 years has been embedded with traditional institution. Democracy is even an offshoot of traditional institution. All sorts of democracy was practiced by the institution that is part of nature. I thank my other colleagues at Sunupe that actually gave that contribution earlier on. Traditional institution is part of the way of life and governance in Nigeria. The earlier we know this, the better. I have never seen any palace in this country that is locked. It's a taboo, naturally, to lock any palace. That's where an average citizen finds solace to quickly run to. And it's a very common factor to every tribe and every dialect. They run to the palaces, either you are Igwe, you are Obi, or you are Kabiesi, or you are Emir, or you are a district head. People naturally converge towards those central places they find solace. The question I always ask political holders, why do you come to our palaces when you campaign all the time? You don't need to come, bypass us. If you truly think you can do it, that's the only place the antenna can be picked, because we know the good, we know the bad, and we know the ugly. Why do you only visit us when you want to climb the ladder of politics? Traditional institution is inevitable within the system. The word trado means our way of life. So it's like you getting rid of your way of life. It's not possible. We have the basket of all professionals. No platform like that in any part of the country and even the world beyond. We have generals, we have business owners, we have entrepreneurs, we have professionals, lawyers, judges, we have past leaders and ministers, we have people involved in sports, people that have actually excelled in various sectors. You will find that mix in traditional institution. For us, I think The political class that are in charge of governance should not see us as competitors, but we complement one another. They can't do it alone. They must come back to us if they want a proper cohesion in governance. We've been saying it over and over again. We are not competitors to political class. We must complement them. The earlier, the better we know this, that it's only a place that there's no immunity as far as our people are concerned. How many of the general populace see their governors or their councillors and chairmen? But we traditional rulers, you dare not lock your palaces, because people will naturally converge and they will ask questions. Every one of us, we have our palace courts. The common people prefer judgment till date in all the palaces. They don't want to go through the bureaucracy of courts for them to pay up stamp and stamp duty and also many administrative fees before they can get fair judgment. They believe in judgment from palace courts. And also, we traditional rulers, it is a selfless thing. No traditional ruler will say, I just want to live a life of my own. You have to live for your people. You have to quest for development within your locality, because you have every structure converged in your palace. It's the best way for even the political class to get leadership to the people. Over the last 300 to 400 years of even Nigerian history, colonization era, they were so powerful, they had all the might, but they couldn't control the people. They went through the traditional institution, either direct rule or indirect rule. And at the part of their country in the north, they couldn't rule directly, but they were using indirect rule system. For more than 100 years, in the southern part of the country, they couldn't practice indirect rule, but they still found a way to get to the people. We are the voice, the voice of the voiceless. This, our institution, is so significant that is connected to nature. For us to get it right in this country, for us to look beyond what they've been doing over the last 60 years, why are we not getting the right improvement, the better to carry us along? For us to reach the common man in terms of development, in terms of dividends of democracy and leadership. But we are just stopgap for their achievement. It's about time for all political leaders to know that we need one another. It's very important. We should be neutral. We shouldn't play partisan politics, but we should be focused on our people. So I think the advocacy for cohesion in governance and involvement of traditional institutions is not so much. It's not something we talk about all the time. It's a very key topical issue. Let them try another system, the political class, and see whether they will not get result. They come to our places, after they win election, they leave us. It's about time for them to know that we're partners in progress and we must compete and complement with one another to make their country a great nation.
Your Imperial Majesty, let me come back to the studio here, and we have Dr. Mainasara Kugo Umar, who's with us here, and straight to the point. the relevance of the traditional institution. Right now, there's no constitutional role. We know that in the past, they played some role under the umbrella in the country. There are calls today that perhaps it's time the traditional institution got more recognition and more constitutional role to perform here. But what are your views?
Well, first of all, I must commend the disposition of the current government to even have the consideration of return of responsibilities to traditional institutions constitutionally. And all the problems we are analyzing is evolutionary in nature. It's based on the dynamics, the political, traditional, and the dynamics of modernity. If you look at it very well, traditional system of governance is the oldest in the history of this country. We have been having traditional system of governance over 5,000 years back. The summary of it was between 1703 to 1804, when we got the end of all these clusters of governance, clusters of community and societal leadership. We started having erection of emirs, especially in the north. They have emirships, they have a leadership spreading up to Niger Republic. And then the Kanuri spreading up to N'Djamena in the present Chad Republic. And then you have the Adamawa down up to the present day Cameroon. The same thing Obon of Calabar was having his destiny up to the present Republic of Cameroon. The same thing all the institutions were having expanding up to that frontiers. Then 1804 we got a revolutionary move. The Sheikh Fodio came and thwarted the hegemony of most of the existing political structures, then establishing the Islamic revolution, let me use that word, which brought about a new set of people, but existing under the same canopy of governance. The same traditional institutions were never bulldozed. And after another 100 years, we saw the coming of the colonialists. 100 years of Yabe, 100 years of Sheikh Fodio, and another 100 years coming of the colonialists. Now, when the colonialists came, they discovered that we were already having stable political system, cohesive political system that had diplomatic missions across the globe, political system that was the instrument of defense for the people, the instrument of social cohesion for the people, the instrument of economic stability, economic harmony, and the instrument of controlling general activities of the people. And that was the reason why the colonialists decided that no, we would not bulldoze the structures we have seen on ground. They even went ahead, even those areas where there were no traditional institutions entrenched, they established warrant officers as a nucleus of springing up traditional institutions, and it continued that way up to the time of the independence. Now, at the independence, the British decided that they have to give us a reflection of what was in existence in their country. Parliamentary system where they have House of Lords there, and House of Commons, the same thing here. They have institutions of parliament called Council of Chiefs. We're having Council of Chiefs and then giving them recognition. And if you look at most of the First Republic ministers, at the federal level and at the regional level, you discover that these are people bearing some traditional titles, simply because their allegiance and the source of diplomatic contacts with the grassroots should be the institution of the traditional system we were having. That one continued, and that was one of the remarkable reasons or the factors behind the success of the First Republic. Immediately after the Civil War, after the war, the military discovered that their number one hard nut to crack. In other words, the number one institution that normally used to give them headache was the traditional institutions. For up to 10 years, when they now decided in 1976 to evolve what was called the Committee of Reform for the Traditional Institutions, headed by the then Baraden Sokoto, who eventually later became the Sultan of Sokoto. At the end of it, the 28 responsibilities of the traditional institutions were then bankrolled to be called what is presently called the local government system. The local government system came, and then they said that our elected local government leaders, in order of protocols, are superior to our royal majesties. And then it continued like that. It didn't succeed just ordinarily like that, but simply because of about 3 different factors. The first factor has to do with, like I said, is evolutionary. Before, there used to be Northern Protectorate and Southern Protectorate. Now we have different states, different divisions, and as a result of which the number of the traditional institutions happen to be expanded, to be increased, and then that brought about lack of homogeneous cohesion among the traditional rulers, and at the same time that creation silenced their zeal, never minding the fact that whosoever becomes into somebody ultimately will come and bow down and say, Your Royal Majesty, crown me, either as whatever the definition of title is may be. And then it continued up to now. But it is wrong to say that they don't have traditional roles. It is wrong to say they don't have traditional roles, because when you took Section 21 of the Constitution, it is mandatory, it is compulsory on our system of governance to respect our customs, costumes, characters, tradition, and the institutions that are supposed to govern that. And even those sections of the Constitution that talks about national cohesion, talking about sections 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, section 21, 23, and 24, definitely speaking, it is not successful. It cannot be successfully be implemented if you look at it critically speaking, without going back to governance at the grassroots level, which is paradoxically the traditional institution. And that is the reason why you discover that present day panacea to social problems, to economic problems, to security problems, to political problems, all of them, the political leaders are going to be counselor. The opinions, the advice, the direction, and the spiritual guidance of our royal majesties.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. In addition to our conversation, we have a number of reports that have been put together. Let's see this one from Maiduguri.
One of the fundamental aspects of governance is to be able to meet the yearnings and aspirations of the followership, especially the common man, for accelerated development and peaceful coexistence. In Borno State, that is still recovering from the traumatic experiences of Boko Haram insurgency, critical issues of local, national, and global interest, like education, health, agriculture, infrastructural development, resettlement of displaced communities, and most importantly, security, are not being compromised towards ensuring a prosperous society.
If the followers are good, loyal, supportive, hardworking, not self-seeking, the leader must be good.
The governor now made it mandatory that the traditional institutions should be in their palaces in order for us to establish civil authorities in the local governments. This has helped by giving the local communities resilience to stay in the local government areas, and also the military formations that were based in these localities, they have also power and confidence to stay in this locality to do the national assignment.
As part of renewed commitment to achieving a harmonious and united Borno, and by extension Nigeria in general, traditional leaders are sustaining the momentum of sensitizing their subjects on peace-building initiatives, as well as operating in line with laid-down guidelines of constituted authorities.
As traditional rulers, we are very much good in promoting good governance in our respective domain. As traditional rulers, we are the linkage between the community and the government. If there is any policies and program from the government, they usually use the traditional rulers to disseminate this information to the subject.
With a more responsive system of governance in place, as well as mutual respect for tribal, religion, and political differences, Borno and Nigeria as a whole are likely to get to the promised land in no distant time. In Maiduguri, Abubakar Musa.
All right, we have this other report that is from Oshogbo.
Traditional institution remains an integral part of every society in Nigeria. The institution plays useful roles in mediating between the people and the government, enhancing national identity, resolving minor conflicts, and providing an institutional safety for the people. As one of the profound administration and governance of the people, the Yoruba Traditional Society is culturally endowed with all spheres of the societal structures, which are guided by traditional political values and ethics. Based on this premise, the custodian of traditional institution in Yoruba land is saddled with the responsibility to promote peace, foster cohesion, and contribute to the political system of governance.
In most of the states, we have state traditional council of Obas. The essence of that having traditional state council of Obas is to assist, to be the advisory arms to the government. So any deliberations we have that affect our people, we do deliberate that in the council of Obas, and we prepare memo that will be sent to the government for actualization of whatever we have discussed.
In building up a unique society that is free from insecurity and conflict, the Yoruba institution is not left out, as its traditional rulers complement the efforts of the government in the maintenance of national security and tranquility.
The governor and the king ought to be working together. The king and the local government authority ought to be working together for security, even for trade, like Oni just did. They ought to be working together so that the people, you and I, we will have peace in our community.
We are very close to the grassroots. We know our people very well. So in terms of security, we are there to provide the necessary assistance to the government.
It is noteworthy that the unique nature of traditional institution in Nigeria is a channel for the promotion of peace, unity, and maintenance of security for a sustainable national development. In Oshogbo, Kayode Oladoshu.
All right, now at this point in time, let's go over to Lafia, where we link up with His Royal Highness Justice Sidi Bagi Mohammed, Emir of Lafia Bari Bari. And, right, okay, we do seem to be having some challenges linking up with the Emir of Lafia Bari Bari. But, okay, maybe at this point we can. Your Royal Highness, it's good to welcome you to this program, and I want to believe that you've heard the views so far since we started off. And at this point, may we ask what your views are on this subject matter, the role of the traditional institution in fostering national cohesion, given that for now there are no specific roles assigned by the Constitution, and now we face calls to include deliberately in the Constitution a specific or specific roles for the traditional institution. Right. Well, we'll still work on that link to see if we can get Justice Sidi Bagi to contribute to this. Probably couldn't even hear the question that we put across to him. But yes, we'll work on that and get back to him. Right, Your Royal Highness, we have you back on now, and hopefully your audio lines are clear now, and I want to believe that you can hear me, and we would very much appreciate your views on the role that the traditional institution can play in fostering national cohesion. Right, okay. Well, we'll still work on it. Let's return to Bida and again link up with His Royal Highness the Ichunupi and say, well, it seems that at this point, given the Supreme Court judgment regarding the autonomy of local governments, many say this would, the traditional rulers would find this a welcome development, being very close to the people at the grassroots. What are your views on that?
Yes, thank you. I think the situation now has already been sort of put in place by the Supreme Court, giving the autonomy of these local government authorities to operate directly and maybe using the available fund to them, generating their own fund and use them the fund accordingly. We and the institution, traditional rulers, we have been actually supporting the local government activities in terms of mobilizing our people, sensitizing them in all the projects and programs they have. But to say, I just want to take us back that yes, the fundamental issue here that we have been actually humming about is our inclusion or recognition in the Nigerian Constitution. It has been amended now, of which we already submitted our memo to the committee in charge of this review of 1999 Constitution. And what we're asking is just legalizing this institution and providing the sort of instrument of working in the act of governance. Because we believe strongly if we are actually being members of the National Council of States, for instance, we have our members there. At the time some policies or programs or decisions are being made, we'll be able to contribute and see that if those policies are actually beneficial to our people or they don't get anything for them. So we're going to be able to advise at that point in time the policies that are very good for our people or that are not good for our people, or the programs. And when we come, we also want to participate in implementation. This now, when we come to our domain, we're able to mobilize our people to ensure that this government's policy and programs are being actually implemented, are being carried out, and things will go very well. So now come to the local government autonomous or the art of governance. We are here with them. We actually talk with them, and then they come to us from time to time to seek advice, to seek support, which we give them without any charge. We don't charge them. So having them now to have their own authority to operate using the available fund or generating their internal IGR to benefit our people will be in a very immediate or a point of need for the local government authorities by telling them, what our people actually need, how they will how they will benefit from whatever program the local government have, and then we'll marshal our people, we advise them, and then move them for the benefit of all of us. So we are insisting, we are actually emphasizing the need for us to have that constitutional recognition. Side by side with the recognition is the functions that will be performing, and purely advisory role, knowing what is good for our people at the time, and then available resources made available to our people, and then utilizing the resources and implementing all the programs that are very beneficial to our people. Not just bringing in a program because, should I give you an example? At the time this polio issue came to this nation, and then the authority found it very difficult to convince our people that polio vaccines are very good for children's health. They were arguing, our people refused because of certain information reaching them that anybody taking that vaccine will go, haywire. No, you may not be able to develop as a man or as a woman. So they have to mobilize the institution, they have to mobilize the traditional institution to let our people know that yes, these vaccines are actually not harmful. They are not as defined by the people, or not by the people. They are very good for our children. And then there and then, people start embracing the program. So you can see the success of that program came into being because we were involved. Because it took the government a hell of time to convince people to take this vaccine. People refused. The medical officers would go to their homes, they would drive them, fighting them and even wounding them to the extent of not to return to those homes. So, but the moment they inform us, we gathered our effort, we gathered ourselves, and then we started convincing. We even took part in a team that was sent outside to verify whether these vaccines are actually harmful or not. So, but then we came back and then discovered that these vaccines are not harmful. We came back and then informed our people that these vaccines are very good for our children and they should embrace it. And so be it. The people embraced it and the program went very well. So this is what we are talking about. The link between the governing and the governed must be bridged. And who is very suitable to bridge this bridge is the transitional institution. So we are still insisting that, we're still trying to persuade the authority that, yes, this institution must be given a recognizable position in the Constitution and also assign some functions that side by side in the act of governance, that is, in the at the table or decision-making table where the decision has been made, we should be part of it. And when it comes to implementation, we should also be part of it. So there and then, we'll see how progressive our nation or our communities will be. And then, yielding to whatever the program the government have at any point in time. Thank you.
Well, Highness, let's return to Lafia, and I believe that this time we can get through to the Emir of Lafia, Bari. Your Royal Highness, Justice Sidi Baghe Mohammed, I do believe now the communication lines are improved. Yes, I'm sure they are. And yes, I'm sure you've listened to the other views and you'd like to avail us of your thinking on this matter. A constitutional role in black and white, traditional institutions, traditional leaders being assigned specific functions, all in the matter of evolving national cohesion.
Well, Mr. Silva, thank you very much. I'm happy that you can hear me now. I have, I'm so yes. Okay, so I've listened to the conversation partly. Yes, I've listened to the conversation partly. I'm happy that I'm given the opportunity to say a word or two on this subject. It has been a subject that I have always been part of, trying to see if the public or the country and our people can get to understand what we have been talking about all of this time. The whole thing has to go back to the historical perspective. It is just that if you have what you call the governance, you have the traditional institution, and you have national cohesion. It means that there is a connect between the three. But if you have the governance, and you remove the traditional institution, and then you are talking of national cohesion, then you have a disconnect. And that's where the problem is now in our country. So if you go back to history, you would see that there had been this connect between these three. There is no point in our history that you can say, okay, this is a point where I can do away with the traditional institution, then continue with the art of governance, and then you have what you call a sufficient national cohesion. Very difficult. I take us back to history. It all started even with the arrival of the colonial masters. They came in and they made an established institution of people being governed. In fact, there were empires that existed in Nigeria over 1,000 years, like the Kanem-Borno Empire and other empires that were there. So when the colonial masters came in and thought that they could, govern what they could call a colony, which was very vast, and they had no resources that they could mobilize at a point and govern this vast colony. And looking at the dearth of colonial officials that could help to manage this, the next idea was to use what they call the indirect rule, because they found an institution that was already established down the line. So they used the indirect rule, agreed, and this was started by the letter that Frederick Lugard wrote to the colonial office, informing them that there is no way we can govern this colony other than to use what can be described as an indirect rule. Use the traditional institution that we found, and the traditional rulers could be the instrument which would use and connect the people easily to govern. They found one word that was very important, and that is what is significantly missing now. That word trust between the people and the traditional rulers. If you have any connection between people, then that word trust must be between them. But if you remove the word trust, you get a disconnect. And that is what is happening right now in this country. And unless we get back to that, the experiment of the indirect rule in this country has really assisted, because the art of governance quickly got settled, and every instrument of government was quickly established, and they started running the government without any problem. And this means, therefore, that the traditional institution was made part and parcel of the governance. It made it easy. They were used really as instruments where the colonial administration was using as a pipeline in getting to the people, but it worked. The best time that we had, the best kind of settled administration that we had in this country was when the indirect rule was practiced in Nigeria. And that took us through the period of the colonial administration. So if you look at from the time of Frederick Lugard himself, then Richard of 1921, he took over. And then it spilled over, going up to Macpherson, up to Richardson, up to Littleton, all of them. It was clearly defined in the constitutions, in all the colonial constitutions, that the position of the traditional rulers were between the colonial administration and the people. There was a direct connect. So the art of governance got very easy. And anyone can say in this country, except those of them who are maybe the younger generations of this day that have not witnessed it, but the best art of governance we got was when the traditional institution was directly in governing, in the art of governing the country. That went up to the time that we had the first Republican Constitution in 1963. It left the traditional institution still at the center of direct governance of government. It only took away a little bit of their legislative power. Some of them who were in the parliament and this were removed by the 1963 Republican Constitution. But they were allowed to move to continue with other institutions of government. They were given chance in education, they were given chance in health institutions. Our educational system was stable because it was the traditional rulers that were moving it. Public schools were the best. In fact, you don't go to private schools then because the public schools being managed by the traditional institution was well established. There is no way you can compare what was then and today. And then, of course, even the local dispensaries for taking care of the health institution were the best. Anything that the traditional rulers had hand in was stable. It was the best. And then when you get to the issue of security, they were in charge of both the internal and, of course, the external security. The traditional institutions were the ones who were in charge of the prisons at that time, and of course they were also in charge of the external security, that is the surrounding, the bushes, around, all were managed by the traditional institutions. So the issue of security was defined, and everyone knew that these were the people that knew the job. They know very well the terrain. They know who is who. They know where to go. Where there is problem here, they know how to go about the problem. But when you think about coming out with reforms started coming. Of course, the powers of the traditional institutions started whittling down with reforms coming after the Republican Constitution. In 1968, the area court reforms came, which took away the powers of the Emir's court, and we started noticing the establishment of what we call now the area courts, and some junior judicial officers were appointed to manage, because there were a lot of complaints that the emirs were too busy with so many things to do. So 68 took away the part of their power with respect to managing the petty judicial job that was part of those responsibilities given to the traditional institution. But what brought about the real collapse, that brought about the real disconnect, was the reforms of 1976, the Dasuki reform, which crystallized the fact of clear separation. Traditional institutions now lost virtually all. And the art of governance now is that the traditional institution was kept by the side, and that is what I describe as the period of the disconnect. Now you have a straight government, not dealing directly with the traditional institution. Their role was strictly maybe advisory if it were necessary, but they were kept completely out of the art of governance. And that was the period that we started having the decline in our art of governance and our what you can describe as national cohesion. Everything started nosediving. Everything started going into decline. You can notice it. Public schools started collapsing. Health system, dispensaries started collapsing. Every system of governance started collapsing. This is because this single word, trust, between those that are given responsibility, even at the local level, since you have democratized the local level, you now have elected officials running the local administration, and the traditional institution was taken aside and kept only as observers. Some of them, if where necessary, were asked to be advisors. That is where the advice is even sought for. So this new democracy that came maybe at the council level, then you have at the state level, and then you have the executive arm of government at the center, took completely hands off of the traditional institution from art of governance. And this brought a disconnect, because there is no direct connection between the people and those that you have placed power or authority on to continue with the art of governance. You have an elected chairman of a local council. Every one of us know about it. These are people that don't have direct connection with the people they are there to govern. They do not have. They are not necessarily where the majority of the people have sat to elect and place there. They are people who don't even really know the day-to-day activity of where they are asked to go and govern. Some of them are strangers of the land which they are asked to come and govern. Some were far from places who come to contest the election and were given the power because of the democratization of the council to run the administration of the council at that level. So this idea of disconnect is what has destroyed everything. Everything. And right from that time, we have been noticing decline. We have been going down, nosediving. There is no progress that could ever be achieved, like what we noticed at the time when the indirect loop system was in operation. So the only way out now is to go back. We can still go back. And that is not difficult to do. Not difficult to do. There are other experiments in the world that we can borrow and copy from. For example, Indonesia, in the Indonesian constitution, at the center is the federal government. At the state level or the provincial level, the constitution gives that part of governance. It gave it to the people to make a choice. Do I wish to be governed by the Sultan in my province? Yes. So the Sultan remains. Do I wish to be governed by an elected official by means of democracy of whatever sort? Yes, it is done. The people are given the opportunity to choose what kind of government to establish. So that also affects the small local council down the ladder. People have the choice. If they want, then they can be given the opportunity of the government that they want. But in the Indonesian experience, everyone knows that provinces that are governed by those sultans have made much more significant progress than those provinces that were given to those democratic officials. So what we are asking for is that, look, yes, people can choose democracy, but democracy does not mean that you have to supplant or impose a system of government that is not working on the people. The people should be given the opportunity to choose what kind of governance they think can work for them. If people in this country, especially in our part of the country, are asked today, do you wish to be governed by the traditional institution in running the local administration? Believe me, place it now. Place it now on the card, and you will see that the yes will overshadow the no. This is an experiment which that reform tried to bring, and since the time of the reform, we have not seen progress. Why do we continue to persist on something that is not giving us results? If you compare the results and see from that end and this end. So this is the point. And what we are saying is that we are not insisting, because what is becoming a bit difficult now is for people to think that it has to be defined clearly in the Constitution, that the role of the traditional rulers are spelled out inside the Constitution. No. You can also, in order to ease up the job, look for powers under, the powers given to the legislative arm of government. The legislature can use its power, like the experiment in Ghana. In Ghana, it is by virtue of a power given to the parliament that they created a traditional institution by an act of parliament. So our own parliament can also do that, create role for the traditional institution by an act of parliament, using the power given to you to make law. The difficulty is the understanding here that people think that the traditional institution must necessarily be cited right inside the Constitution. And we know what amendment to the Constitution entails. It will take time. It takes a lot of time and processes. But if you can use your power, because if you look at the Constitution, you will see that there are certain powers that is given to the legislative arm. There are certain powers that is given to the executive arm, because the executive can even initiate it by an executive order, send it to the assembly, and the assembly can look at it, come out with an act that is the enabling act that will give the traditional institution role to play in the art of governance. Those places that are not working well, we know them in this country. Why can't we give it back to the traditional institution to assist in handling them, at least at the peripheral or the local level? We are okay. And everything will start getting back to order. If you take, for example, I've always said it, if you give back the running of, at elementary level, education back to the traditional institution, give it to us under 5 years, I want to tell Nigerians today, and be assured, you give us 5 years, we will restore back those public schools as they were when we went to school. Because at the time we went to school, those schools were run by the traditional institution. If you give it back to us, because we know nothing, we have nothing other than our duty to the people, and we are directly connected to the people. And there is trust between us and the people. And we will never, ever will want to fail our people, because where we will go to. So that's the problem. That's the problem. That's the area of the connect. But the area of disconnect is that you bring someone who is not directly in connection with the people and their affair, and you ask him to govern the affair of the people. That's where the failure is. And then you give us also the chance to run at primary level, the health institutions. Look at the experiment of those dispensaries, excuse me, dispensaries of those days. They will still come back, and we can restore them back to order. But lastly, on the issue of security, give it to the traditional institution those powers that we used to have in those days. Because in those days, when the traditional institution was in charge of security, our forest, our backyard was really manned and checked. Every emirate, especially in the northern part of the country, it's the same thing with the southern part of the country. We are in charge of looking at the affair of the forest, of the backyard. We had in those days forest rangers that were appointed by the emirs, the chiefs, and the obas and whatever. They were directly answerable to the emirs, and they know the terrain, they know the people, they know where the matter is. So those forest rangers were people who sleep in the forest. They live there in the forest. No part of the forest was left unmanned and checked as it were today. Our forest is empty. Nobody is there to take care of it. So, I mean, any vagabond, petty criminals and all these things will find their heaven there, because you find an empty place, you can go there and do whatever you want to do. We are saying that don't waste the time to think that it must be by direct amendment to the Constitution that the role of the traditional rulers in the governance of this country will come back. No. Let the assembly look at enabling power given to them to make law, come out with an act. I have given the Ghanaian experience. It's by an act of the Ghanaian parliament that the role of the traditional institution is clearly defined now. And you have the best there. You have stability. You have, in fact, when you take the Ghanaian experience now, it gives the traditional institution some liberal position. It gives them also some security on their own. It is not that, I mean, there's very little and not so much of interference from the side of the government. But the traditional institution in itself has its own mechanism, has its own checks. If anything goes wrong with the institution, it is not that an instrument of government has to come in to deal with that. No. It is the senior traditional institution itself that would solve that problem. So if we go back and look at the institution as it is now, and then see what we can do looking at our peculiarities, I am sure that will be much, much better. And national cohesion could be very easy, because what is cohesion? Making it a unity of a whole. But when you take one aspect that is very important, a unity of a whole, that's cohesion. But you take an arm, like the traditional institution, and keep aside, there cannot be a position of national cohesion. You need the traditional institution at the center of it as you are running the government. We are not saying at any given time that the traditional institution should constitute a parallel government from the elected government. No, that's not the answer to it. We are not saying that the traditional institution should be on its own. No, that's not what. It is going to complement whatever the government is doing of the moment. And again, you would see that they will work hand in hand.
All right, Your Royal Highness, yes, thank you so much for bringing that perspective. However, yes, however, there are still aspects that are likely to lead to many more challenges, even as there are calls for the traditional institution to be assigned specific functions under the Constitution. And if we might just bring up one of these, and let's return to His Royal Majesty, the Oni of Ife. Yes, Your Majesty, even as there are calls for a specific assignment, specific functions for the traditional institution, in many cases, all is not well between the government and the traditional institutions in some parts. And conflicts have been known to have been thrown up either for political reasons, for social reasons, and it's been known that in some cases the conflict between the government and traditional rulers has gone so awry that there are cases where the institution has suffered. How do you see, what do you think can be done to resolve these issues? Some would say, for instance, that, well, it is the government that appoints the traditional rulers, so it should be their prerogative to remove them. And the others would say, look, the traditional institution, the traditional rulers are the custodians of the people's core traditions and values, and therefore they should not be at the whims and caprices of government. How do you think this can be resolved?
Thank you very much. For every traditional ruler of this country, we should know a very clear difference between traditional rulership and politics. I repeat, traditional rulership and politics, they are very, very different. Yes, the constitution of their country says the appointment goes through the political class, the governor or the people in the political class. But a traditional ruler should know very clearly that he is in charge of the tradition of his people, a custodian of tradition and culture, the way of life of people. Okay? A traditional ruler should separate politics. It's very important. Even if you are being dragged to it, maybe a particular party actually appointed a particular traditional ruler, you will want to play or pay allegiance to that political leader. The allegiance should go to the people, should go to the tradition of the people, and go to the culture of the people. That is a fundamental rule a traditional ruler should understand. If you are being dragged, the best bet is to play a very neutral role as a father, father to all, father to A or B. Because I'll give you a good example. Look, we all know what is happening in Kano. We are not happy about it. We are just waiting for the courts to determine, because it's undermining our institution on a gradual basis. It's getting bad. We do not like it. We're coming as a formidable force to actually forestall things like this in the foreseeable future. What is critical for us, because as you see us in National Council of Traditional Rulers, we actually engage ourselves in peer review mechanism. We let ourselves know that traditional rulers, we should mind the way we actually get involved in politics so that it's not going to boomerang. We still continue to actually train ourselves, engage ourselves. So the only way to avoid politicians is to play neutral. It might be a very challenging role for any traditional ruler, but what is critical is to be neutral. Play partisan politics. You play, what if they don't win? What if the best party you are supporting does not win? You are going to be in trouble. So it's very important. That's what we do to ourselves. We engage ourselves from time to time that please, please, and please, the political class will mess things up for us. And at the end of the day, who will suffer it? It is our institution. They will continue to degrade it further. So for us, in a nutshell, we have the mix of different professionals. Let us tie our effort to service to our people beyond politics, even if we want to be dragged into it. We are always being dragged into it. We should use our senses. It's very important, and that's my view as a traditional ruler. Thank you.
Your Majesty Eze, how do you insulate the traditional institution from politics? Yes.
Well, thank you. First of all of us are agreed on the fact that we need the traditional institution in Nigeria as of today. Every speaker here has explained that there's no way the government can solve the problems of development, the problem of insecurity, and the problem of peace in the various communities without the traditional rulers. That is accepted. But the traditional ruler we are talking of is a traditional ruler of Nigeria. If Nigerians really need this traditional ruler, they must speak up in support of the traditional institution. It should not be left to us, traditional rulers alone, to argue for this. We really need it. Those, whether you're a politician, you're a trader, you're a farmer, whoever you are, there is a traditional ruler of your community. And anything happening in the community, the first port of call is the palace. Whether it is armed robbery, whether it is stealing, whether it is even murder cases, they will first run to the palace before they get to anywhere. But then, if we are serious about this, if we know the benefits, all of us, including those in the media, like your good self, should support this idea that a role should be given to the traditional institution in the Constitution. It's not, we are not asking for something that Nigerians have not known. I explained it earlier, that even in the First Republic, traditional rulers were part and parcel of governance. So we need this thing to be, inserted in the Constitution. In fact, a traditional ruler from a section of this country had told me that by the traditional rulers agreeing to have their roles put in the Constitution, that in fact, contracting their role. Because before, you talked about Constitution, even after the colonial rulers came in, the traditional had all the powers in their respective kingdoms. They had their prisons, they have their courts, they have everything. They have their police. But then they started taking these things one by one. If you put it in the Constitution, I know what we are asking for, we may never get all that it used to be. But what we are saying is that, yes, at this moment, there is a need to specify the roles and functions of Nigerian traditional rulers in the Constitution so that people can know what they are supposed to do or not do. Again, there's a way that we behave as ostrich even what is already in the constitution is not being done. I give you an example. They say traditional rulers should get 5% of the allocation of local government. As we are talking, it's not being done in many states in this country. That is clear. So we believe, in fact, when the presidency sent a matter to the Supreme Court, asking for the revenue of the local government to be sent direct to the local governments. What prevented the presidency from even saying that that little 5% should also go directly to the traditional rulers? You see what I mean? So let us be very clear in our minds. Every form of government has its challenges, whether it is monarchy, whether it's democracy. But the truth of the matter is that people have to make up their minds and be honest about it to make it work.
Okay. Dr. Minister Umar, you heard what His Royal Majesty has just said at this point in time, that yes, if we're all celebrating, it's been widely celebrated, the judgment of the Supreme Court on the financial autonomy of local governments, that wouldn't it be a good idea if, what is meant to be allocated to traditional rulers were to go to them directly? And would this help better relations between the government and the traditional institution? Because we have seen in many cases where there seems to be conflicts that are always, blowing out and escalating here.
Yes, in all honesty, if we want to respect Section 14, subsection 1 of the Constitution, that says sovereignty belongs to the people, we must bankroll the hegemony of the traditional institutions to them. And for us to do that, we must give it a radical approach. And it has to start with the traditional institutions. They must be united. There must be unity of purpose, commonality of purpose. They must be united. That is first. And regarding the window of opportunity now open, there are two windows of opportunity. The first one is the fact that constitutional amendment is ongoing. And this is the right time to insulate their functions in the Constitution. The second one is there is a bill, National Council for Traditional Rulers. It is very, very important time that the traditional institutions should be cohesive enough to go there during public hearings. I will be prepared to lead the debate there in protecting their hegemony. Now, in doing that, we need certain things to be entrenched in the Constitution. It is fundamental. First of all, I would like to advocate that the traditional institutions should be excluded for them to be exclusively under the federal structure. The traditional institutions should be under the federal structure. On the one side, we have the National Council of Traditional Rulers. On the second side, we should have the Constitution insulating some powers. For example, when you look at Section 153, subsections K, L, and M, that talks about the National Defense Council, National Security Council, and the Nigerian Police Council. These three should have representation of the National Council for Traditional Rulers. It is very, very important. It is fundamental because they know the challenges and the difficulties and the terrains of their localities. And in giving them responsibilities, there are certain powers that I want specifically to be specified. For example, control of registration of birth and death at the level of, at whatever level, it should be their responsibilities rather than the local government setting, or rather than people going to be swearing on affidavits at the various registries of the courts. It should be centralized, whereby at the ward level there is a leader, at the district level there is a leader, at the divisional or provincial level there is a leader, like that, for them to collect, to assist the national population census, the National Commission for process. The second one is that they should be involved in issues of boundary matters, because they are the custodians of our culture, customs, history, and traditions. They should be the ones to be, settling disputes when it comes to matters of border disputes. You can't appoint somebody as a DG of National Boundary Commission that do not know the history of the homogeneous congeniality of people within a particular setting, do not know much about their long trajectory of the development up to this level. You need the traditional rulers to be the pathfinders of panacea when it comes to the issue of disputes regarding boundary matters. The third one is the issue of giving them responsibility to be the ones to be delimiting cattle routes. There used to be cattle routes. There used to be this thing which used to solve this problem of cattle, Fulani herders, and the farmers. So they should be the ones to be given the responsibility, in addition to responsibility of veterinary immunizations, control and collection of, there used to be collection of taxes in those days, we used to call it jungly. There used to be collection of that, and by means of the collection of the taxes, you will be able to get familiarity with the herders, you will be able to know them, you will be able to know their terrain, you will be able to know their locality, and you will be able to assimilate their system of hardos, their systems of governance into the traditional architecture, and by means of which you will be able to quickly know who are the foreigners that are coming to be disrupting the peace and the district of the district. Another one is the issue of community immigration. The issue of somebody coming into a community just without knowing from where he is. In those days, it used to be the responsibility of the traditional rulers to quickly identify from where did you come, what were you doing, what is your trade and profession. They will be able to very easily link up with where he claimed to have come from to find out about his discipline, about his chastity, about his morality, about his sincerity, and other things, to be able to determine whether to accommodate him within the locality or to ask him to go further. In those days, there used to be something like that, but nowadays you don't have. Another area you need to bring about this thing is the control of markets and parks. Markets, parks, Brussels, motor parks, all those areas, including, transactions related to commodity exchange. In those days, you have traditional rulers are the ones, through their own efforts, you have, pyramids. You have pyramids established. Cutting boards were there, marketing boards were there, groundnut boards were there. All those things can be returned back so that traditional rulers can be given the responsibilities of superheading and harmonizing all these type of trades in civility, in order, and in decorum. At the same time, too, it is very important you bring about cultural activities, traditional activities, the traditional davos, the traditional festival of arts and culture, and so many other things that will serve as the harbinger of integration of people. People of diverse cultures and traditions, they will come and display the best of their traditions, the richness of their cultures, the best of their customs, so that you even invite international community to come, embassies, and they come, so that they will see that there are a lot of things to learn in our customs, in our culture, in our tradition, in our history. By the time you now begin to do that one, even the traditional rulers, you are bringing the cohesion among them, so that among them they will be able to do this. And you cannot succeed in having these type of things that I'm talking about without the reality of institutionalizing it in the Constitution. The Constitution is the grand norm. Irrespective of whatever roles you give them in an act, somebody can easily come and challenge it within the ambience of the Constitution, and it will bulldoze whatever privileges are given to you. So I want the traditional rules to be bold, to be united, to be cohesive, and to be proactive on this. Nobody can fight for this, your rights, better than you yourself being the spearheaders. We are prepared to join you people and support you, because we too have a stake in entrenching the reversal of our customs, values, traditions, history, culture, and tradition.
Well, let me again return to the Emir of Lafia and Beribadi. And, okay, we've lost the signal to Lafia. We've lost the signal to... Okay, right, we got it back. Your Royal Highness, let me return to you in the matter of the relationship between government and the traditional institution. Of late, we've seen somewhat a discord between some government institutions, the traditional institution, which has led to conflicts, as it were, between government and the traditional institution. Now, if the traditional institution is now assigned specific roles in that constitution, and given the fact that most times the appointments of traditional leaders rests with the political leaders, do you worry that there could be an escalation of this kind of conflicts in terms of the role and in terms of control and who does what?
Thank you very much, my friend Stover. Very easy. We've already said that looking at the experience of some other jurisdiction, it's very clear when the Constitution defines that there is, for example, a National Council of Traditional Rulers, and each state is to have a council of its own. If it is defined either in the Constitution or the Act as may be, as the case may be, what's going to happen is that the National Council of Traditional Rulers in the country will now sit and superintend over the affair of dispute, of complaints, of things that are related to the matters of the traditional institution. It is not for you to be a judge in your own cause, as is with the present case today. The governors and those of them who are in authority today are their judges, are the complainant, are the investigators. At the same time, they take the last portion of punishment. That is in any civilized justice system. That cannot happen. So what we are advocating this time around is that if the Constitution recognizes the presence of the traditional institution, create a National Council of Traditional Rulers. The National Council of Traditional Rulers now will sit there, made up of very eminent traditional rulers in the country. If you, as the governor or chief executive of any state, you have a complaint against any of your chief or emir, you have your case presented to the National Council of Traditional Rulers. The National Council will then sit on that complaint, give opportunity to the one that is being complained against. He can come in person, he can come through a council of choice to defend those complaints that is made by the executive or whoever is bringing the complaint against the chief or the emir, as the case may be. And after a diligent job done by the National Council, the result of their investigation and their conclusion will then be sent back for implementation. But where you have a situation where someone is the complainant, the investigator, and at the same time he takes the portion of penology, he is the one that will discipline, that is not civilized. And this is the result of this, what we have today. The institution is now in a situation of ridicule in the eye of the public, because those of them who are in authority today will think that you can take any decision where you find, maybe for political reason or whatever, you think that you do not agree with the emir or chief, you can remove at will. That is not right. The issue of appointment, as it were, and intended by law, is that you are not expected to appoint unless you have received suggestion from, because each council, each traditional council has its mode of selection. It has its college of selection. The college of selection, that is the traditional college of selection, will sit there, and because they know the people and they know what the tradition prescribes, it is that council of selectors that will choose from those of them who are contesting to occupy that stool. And their final result is then sent to whoever that is there in authority to do the appointment. Where the point is is not really observed these days is that the issue of thinking that portion of the College of Selectors, their role is strictly advisory, and that you can neglect the advice, is missing the provision of the law in itself. Because the advisory role is one that is mandatory. It's mandatory, it's not optional on the governor to say, I can take this action of appointment and neglecting the advice of the Electoral College. If you look at the law, strictly speaking, the advice is mandatory. You have to. If they send a name to you that you think there is a need for them to go back, what the law expects you to do is to return it to them and ask them to send further suggestions to you. It is not for you. No governor has that right, and it is against the law. But today, it is done with abundant recklessness. Governors would just refuse to hear the advice of the Electoral College, neglect the entire advice of the Electoral College, appoint emirs of their choice or chiefs without going through the process as it were. And all the traditional rights, all the people that are there to provide support so that the traditional ruler will now be placed in his proper place, is not there. And this is where the problem is today. So what we are saying, in essence, is that today we need the National Council of Traditional Rulers who will handle this job. In appointment, they should be consulted for advice. The names of those of them who are going to, especially the senior traditional rulers, should go to the National Council. The National Council will help after the first electoral college. They will look at the candidates and advise the chief executives appropriately. But when it comes to the case of removal, if there is, it goes through the same process. If you have complaint against any of your chiefs, you are to refer your complaint, what you have, to the National Council. The National Council of the Traditional Rulers will look at it, sit on it, investigate on the complaint, give opportunity to the traditional ruler to be heard, to defend himself, either in person or through a council of his choice, defend those allegations, and then the entire result is sent back, processed for implementation. If we do that, we'll be able to restore back the glory. But as it were today, the institution is nosediving because some of them in politics think they have all the power to appoint and remove at will, destroying the entire essence of the institution. So quickly, in order to arrest this trend and not to allow the entire institution destroyed, we should quickly look at, I am advocating for, I did say in my speech, that amending a constitution, making constitution is not an easy process, but you can start from somewhere. The parliament now has the right to create, by means of an act of parliament, a national traditional council. Then direct that each state should have a state-owned traditional council of its own. The national council will superintend over the affair of the traditional rulers in the country in terms of discipline, in terms of other things related to the day-to-day running of the traditional institution. The governors are there working with them. If you have your complaint, if you have things that you disagree with, you have the right to process it and then send it to the council. Council will now do their job and send it back to you for implementation. But you cannot be your own judge, you cannot be the investigator, the judge, and then in the area of penology, you are the one to punish. That is not civilized. That is not meeting with international standard or whatever standard of justice that will be required for. So if the National Council is there put on ground, the suggestion is very simple. You can make up a council either from maybe certain number from each geopolitical zone, or you can decide and say, okay, each zone, as it were, the chairman of the traditional institution in each of these zones should all come together and constitute a council of its choice, and then you can appoint leadership, allow the council to function. At the state, you can also have each local government, the chairman of the respective local government, and the chairman of the traditional council in the state will chair that council. If there is a complaint by the governor, the governor should then send his complaint to the traditional council.
Thank you very much, Your Royal Highness. Let's explore this a little further as I go back to the Etunupe and say, yes, the traditional institution can play a role, as has been espoused by all the speakers on today's program. They have a key role to play, and there are many Nigerians today who would be looking forward to the insertion of a specific function for traditional rulers in the Constitution. However, the traditional institution, as it is known today, has also been accused of having whittled down its relevance, its neutrality, and sometimes some traditional rulers have been accused of abandoning the core values of the people's tradition, abandoning the values of reward, and have gone instead in search of the good things, trying to feather their nests. They've also pointed fingers at the traditional institution of abandoning what used to be upholding good character and appointing, giving out rewards and titles to people of questionable character. And so the critics of this say, if this institution has been so polluted, how much can it really contribute if it is now given a bigger role to play?
Yes, Surya, thank you. Once again, I come into, first of all, I've been agitating to make some comments in terms of this role we're expected to have in the Constitution, and also checking the entirety of our national development, involvement in politics. Where I'm saying that you go back to the history of this country, Nigeria, we practice what you call parliamentary system, and along the line we changed to presidential system, and still we're still struggling to make ends meet in terms of act of governance. And to worsen the situation, we decided to set aside or push aside this God-given institution, right, the traditional institution, that is very close to the people, understand the people, and also bear all the consequences of life with the people. So, yeah, the issue of some of us, jumping from the normal identifiable position to do other things, may not be far-fetched, because some feel that, yes, if we're entitled to certain position, then we still expected to do something for our people. Because as we sit in our palaces, day in and day out, 24/7, people come to us to seek for advice, settlement of disputes, and other social, economic problems and which we face. Yeah, some of us are farmers, some of us have to be traders also, to ensure that, yes, we get things that will get our people to be in line with the life. And that's why I find some of us getting too much out to go and look for something doing elsewhere. The issue of giving traditional titles to probably some not befitting individuals in our community. Could also be sort of like a deceptive measure. What I say deceptive, and that's saying that some people will present themselves to be good people in our community because we have, like my Imperial Majesty has said, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we'll treat them on an equal platform. If we identify you be a good person in terms of behavior and recommendation from other people, we'll try to encourage you to give you title. But in so many occasions, we make mistakes. We are human beings also. Some mistakes are being made, and through this process, when you identify individual who pretend that it's good all the way, suddenly it changes to, like a chameleon. It changes to another direction. So what do? You have to bear the consequences. You have alternatives. If you give him title and he misbehaves, you remove that title for him. Straight ahead. It's part of our custom and tradition. And that's why, also come to the issue of authority to appoint and then to remove a king. We have a council, we usually call them kingmakers. These are the people who usually sit to decide on who to become the king or to occupy the seat when the seat is vacant. So all these things have been sort of pushed aside. And that's why our governors in various states now, they take it upon themselves that they are the kingmakers. They are the sort of the same people who will dethrone a king if he commits any error. So all these things are being sort of abused. And the council is still there. Before any king is being appointed, these kingmakers, they know the individuals, they know their background, family background, they know their tradition, their culture, and some even consult oracles to see among 3 people who are fighting for a stool, who will be the best candidate. So in that process, you see people, bringing out the right person on the stool. But now the governor, because of political reasons, mostly on political reasons, you see some governors accusing some traditional rulers why are they not supporting their own party, why are they not supporting their own candidature. That is not part of the fault you find in the traditional law. As long as they were all human beings, we can have that choice, but not, we try to insulate ourselves from partisan politics. We are not supposed to. We are not supposed to practically come out to say this is our sort of adopted sort of candidate. No. Everybody is from our own community is our son. Everyone is our son. No, we take everybody equally. So if a political leader or maybe party visits you in your palace, all you need to do is to welcome him and pray for him. God gives, God takes. You don't have the you don't have the power to plant anybody to become a governor or to elect anybody to be a governor. No, it's only God that can appoint or can make somebody a governor. But you, in your own wisdom, you listen to him, you advise him. It is good for him. Some come to me here and I will tell them outright that no, this field you are choosing, please avoid it. It is not time yet. Go and do your normal work. Go and do your business and continue. You don't have to go and contest for gubernatorial or something. No, I will tell them outright. And those who come and feel that they have the wherewithal, they have the potential, whatever leadership, qualities, characters in them, I also advise them. Go ahead. May Allah help you and continue on that. So the relationship should be on that platform, neutral. Should be neutral as much as possible, so we don't see ourselves going into the politics just like a politician. No. Yeah, we are all political animals. Every woman is a political animal. So we believe that whatever we're playing as a father to all, we should play it within us and display it in a very perfect wisdom that God has given us. We have some wisdom that God has given us, not to come and say, I like this candidate more than that. No. It's not in our character. So we believe our institution should be protected, and we should insulate from partisan politics. We should be insulated from partisan politics, so that we have that protection, so that we have that respect And then we believe strongly there are so many advantages and disadvantages that an institution can give to the act of governance, both local, state, and federal. So many advantages. As already mentioned, we have so many things to do. And then we can insulate ourselves from actual partisan politics. As my learned colleague, traditional ruler from Lafia said, that we should be meeting and galvanize what we're supposed to expected to do, and advise ourselves to be moderate in terms of dealing in politics. And I assure you, so that inshallah, this country, that if this institution is able to follow, to perform, to support, to complement the act of governance, inshallah will go a long way to have, to solve most of the problems that is confronting the country now. Thank you.
Royal Highness, at this point we'll take a short break. When we return, we'll take on the concluding part of this program. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly.
The counsel of our fathers.
I will urge and advise our younger generation to use talent and brain to sort out problems, not arms.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
I believe we have fought one civil war too many in this country. So those who experience it will run away from it.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
Thank you for staying with us. We have another report we'd like to bring to you. This one is from Oka.
The traditional institutions have over the years proven veritable platform for administration of the grassroots. The grassroots institutions have shouldered enormous responsibilities that have engendered harmony and peace amongst the people of the communities. In Anambra State, the 177 communities rely on ingenuities of the traditional institution in settling disputes relating to lands, marriages, burials, among others, thereby ensuring peaceful coexistence in the communities.
Provides service delivery to the people and also try to sustain development at the grassroots.
Little problems that could grow to big problems emanate from the grassroots. And if you nip these problems in the bud, certain problems that the government faces may no longer be experienced.
They should empower traditional rulers because you cannot do anything without authority. There should be a constitutional rule that empowers us to take charge, to take control, to make sure that we instill peace and unity. We instill discipline.
In order to disabuse the minds of the youth and check youth restiveness, the traditional institutions embark on empowerment programs aimed at engaging the youth through distribution of seedlings and other farm inputs during the farming season.
For us to keep the peace and the peace, government should always ask us what we do to ensure continuity of peace in our localities. They should ask us, oh, farming season is coming. What do we do to assist the farmers?
In the midst of meager resources, the traditional institutions continue to maintain their local vigilante while complementing the Nigerian police force in securing lives and property of the people.
community policing, we have advocated for it, and government has accepted, but is not implemented. Immediate implementation will help to curb insecurity in communities.
Concerned citizens observe that strengthening the traditional institutions which are closest to the people will eventually translate to peace, unity and progress in the communities, state, local government and the entire nation. In Oka, Daniel Okbai.
All right, from that report, let's return to His Imperial Majesty, the Oni, at this point in time. Your Majesty, as we begin to wind down, what would you expect from government at all levels to fast-track national unity?
Well, for government to fast-track national unity, number one is for them to be selfless and place Nigeria above their selfish interests. Our nation is a very peculiar nation. Our diversity should be our strength. However, we are stronger individually as a nation than coming together collectively as a nation. We condemn our their nation at will. We are not patriotic enough. For our leaders, they should do everything that is for Nigeria. They should live for Nigeria. They should buy Nigeria. They should eat Nigeria. They should process Nigeria in everything they do. These things are basic things to show patriotism. These things are basic things that leaders should give back to their people, because the people they're leading, they should see themselves as servants, not as leaders. They are the ones that vied for those positions, be it in the political class and also we, the traditional rulers. Patriotism should be our watchword. We should always live and not think Nigeria is a platform just for us to pass through a lot of things and achieve our self-aggrandizement. Nigeria should be part of our essence of living. A lot of people, especially our political class, they make their fortunes in the country, yet they take it out to spend it. That is lack of patriotism. They take their children and siblings out of the country to do anything they want to do. That is lack of patriotism. Everything you want to do it in this country. Believe in Nigeria. Believe in everything you do. Even to take care of your health. Stay in Nigeria. Develop it. If you have so much wealth, build hospitals. Provide healthcare services across board. Be selfless in your leadership style. Let people see it. People are not blind. The people that you are leading are not blind. They can see every effort that you are making. So we leaders, both the traditional institution and the political institution, and our political leaders, we should lead by example. If we have clear and true patriotism in Nigeria, our country will be a better place. Let us bring governance to the doorstep of people. We shouldn't treat them as animals. We shouldn't be too far from them. What the current government has done concerning the local government autonomy is a welcome development. We believe such a thing will actually promote local development. We are trying different approaches in Nigeria now. Let us continue to try different approaches. For us, traditional rulers, we also need to check ourselves. We need to check our excesses and also put our their country before anything. Before Nigeria came into being, the traditional institutions have been there. We are the forefathers and forebears and the fathers of the nation. Politicians will come and go. We are there. We should lead by example. We should bring our people much more closer. And we should leave and open door for every complaint in our environment. Leadership and politics, they say, is local. Local development is the engine room and the foundation of every national development. We should not forget where we all came from in terms of our locality, and we should focus on it. We shouldn't be in a hurry to leave our locality. We should strive to give back to it and see that truly, truly, their pains are our pains. Their worries are our worries. So for us, in the leadership category of this country, we should lead clearly by example. God bless our their country, Nigeria, and God bless each and every leader of this country. Amen. We should lead clearly by example.
For being part of this discussion is Imperial Majesty Abba Adie Enito Ogunwusi Ojaja II, Oni of Ife, and co-chairman of the National Council of Traditional Rulers of Nigeria. We thank you, Kabiesi. Thank you very much. Well, we will go over to Lafia once more, and in his closing comments, as we fast concluding this program, let's go back to Lafia and ask His Royal Highness Justice Sidi Bagi Mohammed his closing comments on how the government can fast-track unity in this country. Your Highness.
Well, I thank you very much, my friend Siri. I will firstly adopt as mine the beautiful submission just made by His Imperial Majesty the Oni. He has spoken in broad spectrum all that is needed for national cohesion, national development, and what the government needs to do. By my training, firstly as a lawyer, there wouldn't be the need for me to go into repetitions of some of those beautiful things that he has said. But let me just emphasize on the fact that what this country needs, basically from the side of the government, is a more practical approach in the art of governance. It is not to subject yourself, enslave yourself to the system of democracy that you have chosen yourself to ease off the art of governance. Please emphasize on the fact that you can look at certain peculiarities that are more with you, that will be more beneficial to the people, so that the people will have a direct effect of the art of governance. Please practice it. Please practice it. This democracy, we chose it to practice the system of American democracy. It was our free choice. We voluntarily adopted it. We adopted it and thought that we are living the parliamentary system, it could do us better. But we are not expected to be a slave to a system which we have chosen for ourselves to better the lives and betterment of our people. If we find there are certain areas that are really not working well, please let us look at our Constitution, which is the grand norm, Let us see things that will not go outside of the Constitution, things that could be very practical. Let's go for them. Because what is important to us is that if you have any opportunity, make use of. Forget about result, because result is not important. What is important is opportunity. If you have an opportunity, try to equalize it. What happened to the previous administration in sticking to this? Let me see. If you put it in perspective, you will see that if that has not produced result, then change gear immediately. Go to another direction. Insofar as you have not gone outside the provision of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, please go for it. Go for it and make sure that you do things that will be beneficial to the people, directly to the people of this country. Like I said, I have adopted the submission of His Imperial Majesty, very beautiful submission. I've only emphasized on the fact that please go and look for what will benefit this country and don't be a slave to the system of governance that we have adopted ourselves for our years.
Your Royal Highness, thank you so much. Justice Asidi Bagi Mohammed, Emir of Lafi and Beriberi, Chairman, Nasarawa State Council of Emirs and Chiefs, and the retired Justice of the Supreme Court. We thank you for being part of us tonight. And in concluding, I would also go back quickly to His Royal Highness Alhaji Dr. Yahya Abubakar Ichunupe. And Your Royal Highness, we would just ask you in concluding, as we've virtually run out of time, your final words to the Nigerian leadership on how to fast-track unity.
Oh, thank you once again, and we're very glad to be here with you for the past 2 hours, just to bear our minds to these very, very important national issues. And we believe that, yes, we just want to give our own candid advice to the authorities that the issue of implementation should be looked into seriously. You know, there are so many projects, so many programs being announced day in, day out. But when it comes to implementation, we have what we call a go slow type of speed. And as a developing country, people are very anxious. They want to know things happening very fast. So we believe that we should maybe devise a very quick mechanism of implementing whatever program we have for the people. Not just announcing a program now and then, after a while, nothing comes up, nothing comes out. So I believe strongly the art of implementation should be moved faster than what it is now, so that at least we'll be able to address the issue that is bothering people. Every now and then people are complaining, people are eager to do something. And then direction should be given. The moment that program or that policy is being made, the implementation should be carried out very, very fast. Because we are a developing country, people are also very anxious to see things happening. So that's my advice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abagadoji Echunupe, Chairman, Niger State Council of Traditional Rulers, and Coordinating Committee of the National Council of Traditional Rulers of Nigeria, who joined us via Zoom from Bida. Thank you once again, Your Royal Highness. Thank you. And back here in the studio, Your Majesty Eze, the same we put to you on fostering unity as we conclude.
Sir, thank you very much. You see, the democracy is government based on law. And each democratic country will have a constitution. For progress to occur, that constitution has to be respected by everybody. Majority of Nigerians are law-abiding. Majority of Nigerians are hardworking. Majority of Nigerians would like this country to be one of the best in the world. What is our problem?
Okay.
Our problem is leadership at all levels, from top to bottom. And what is the problem of the leadership in this country? Is their inability at times to obey the basic law, the fundamental law of this country, as enshrined in the Nigerian constitution. Their, disposition to impunity at times. I have the power, I can do anything. If you are at the level of presidency or at the level of governor, at the level of traditional rulers, at the level of local government people, once some of us get power, we become drunk. And we don't want to obey the law. So I think if we want this country to be united, to move forward, everybody must be given his due. Let the traditional rulers get their due. Let everybody get his due.
Right.
Let justice prevail. Let us obey the laws of the land, obey the pronouncements of the Supreme Court and the courts. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Majesty, Dr. Lawrence Agubuzu, the Eze Winechindu of Eze Maolu Kingdom, former chairman, Enugu State Council of Traditional Rulers, and former chairman, Southeast Council of Traditional Rulers, also a former career ambassador of Nigeria to the United Nations. Thank you, Your Majesty. Well, Dr. Menasra Kugu Umar, you got the last say at this point, but you just have about a minute.
Well, in summary, for Nigeria to attain progression, we must consummate a marriage of traditionality and modernity.
Right.
We must do that. And for us to do that, the traditional class, the traditional institutions, should metamorphose into mirrors of moral chastity. Exemplary mirrors of moral chastity. They should be up and doing when it comes to issue of moral chastity. And they should discipline themselves in the pursuit of economic and political interest. They should discipline themselves in that respect. They should desist political inclusion. By the time they now do that, they should uphold the heritages of the people's congeniality, the heritages of people's history, people's customs and character. By the time they do that one, then they should get sense of unity among themselves. They should be united. They are not united the way I want it currently. And they should be fearless. And they should be forthright in the pursuit of their own aspirations. By the time they do these things and with the symbiotic marriage between traditionality and modernity, I believe Nigeria will get it to the El Dorado.
Well, thank you so very much. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you, Dr. Menasra Kugu Umar, lawyer, public affairs analyst, and newly appointed chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal. We thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's our program. We thank you for watching. Next week, we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Bye for now.